Let's see. The recording has started.
Just need to do that. It didn't do it automatically. I apologize.
So- Wait. Hi, this is Daisy Glassburn, Chair of the Board of Real Estate Appraisers. Today's November 6th. Excuse me. It's 9 a.m. This is a public meeting of the Board of Real Estate Appraisers. We'll now call this meeting to order and begin by having the Division Director perform a roll call.
Daisy Glassburn,
Here.
Bessie Chachas,
Here.
Brett Goff,
Here.
Brett Sirius Wise,
Here.
Rob Stylo,
Here.
Clint Taylor, and Valerie Bartel are absent, but you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the board meeting minutes from September 4th, 2025?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Who was that? I'm sorry.
This is Brett Goff. I'll second.
Okay, great. There's been a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes for the September 4th, 2025 Board of Real Estate Appraisers. All of those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I think I only heard 3.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. The motion passes. We are going to deviate a little bit from the rearrange the agenda and move to executive session to discuss the proposed revisions for Board Rule 11.3 as well as the Attorney General update and advisement for Ronald Seilhauer stipulation. And this is Daisy Glassburn. It is November 6th, 2025. The time is now 9:02. This is a meeting of the Colorado Board of Real Estate Appraisers, and I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to section 24-6-402-3A2 of the Colorado Revised Statute to receive legal advice on specific legal questions concerning the Ronald Seilhauer stipulation and final agency order, for the Attorney General update and advisement, and the proposed revisions to Board Rule 11.3. Do I have a second on this motion?
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay,
Aye.
there are five votes on record, and we will move to executive session. See, do we have everybody here?
I've texted Bessie to bring her back as well.
Okay, we'll wait then.
Give her just a minute.
Okay,
Sorry, guys.
that's okay. The time is 9:50 a.m. and the board is now back in open session. The next item on the agenda is policy matters. Marcia?
So, board members, a couple meetings ago, you had asked for some kind of further clarifying language for Board Rule 11.3 about consulting services. And I sent you a draft that incorporates the language that I specifically pulled from the statute for your consideration. So if you want to discuss whether that's sufficient, if you want to move forward with rulemaking, let me know, and I can get a a draft of the rule filed with the Secretary of State, and we can look at doing rulemaking in January or March, whatever you prefer. But I'm just looking for kind of a discussion and some further clarification from the board as to what you would like to do.
Brent, did you want to speak to some of the clarifying language that you had mentioned?
Brent, I think you're on mute again.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this is Brent Goff. So as the assessor member, I'm keen to the idea that Colorado is really unique in the due process for taxpayers. We actually have two avenues of due process. The first one is the protest to the assessor, and then an appeal to the County Board of Equalization, and ultimately the taxpayer can go to either district court, Board of Assessment Appeals, or arbitration. So if they're out of the country or they just don't look at their notice of
Brent, I'm
value.
having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, I'll try to speak up.
Okay.
The second avenue of due process in Colorado is called an abatement. And so the abatement would be available after the tax bill is levied. And that's a different due process track. So I would like to suggest that we would add some language to the rule where it says advocacy in regard to property tax assessments. After that word, we'd add the word protests, comma, appeals, comma, and abatements of property tax assessments. We have
Also,
a lot
if we can,
go ahead.
what?
We have advocacy in property tax appeals in Colorado as long as they disclose. And that's the first question I ask is, why are you here? Are you here doing a fee appraisal, independent appraisal? Or is this for, are you acting as an advocate? And I would like to add that language to cover if they're advocating during an abatement as well as a protest.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Also, if we could flag it during the sunset review for statutory language.
That'd be good, because then the rule would be in lockstep with the statute if we could affect a change in the actual statute to include protests, appeals, and abatements. That would be ideal.
We can do that. So if I make that change, are you good with me filing this so that you can do a rulemaking in January?
I think
Yes.
so.
Okay. Do you want to vote on that so that the whole board can give me the direction?
I was just gonna pop in and say, board members, is this something you want to vote on?
And we would be voting that, Marsha, you go ahead and continue this to rulemaking?
That I make the recommended changes and that I file it for rulemaking.
File it for rulemaking, okay. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. This is Brett Goff. I make the motion that we add language to the rule that includes protests, comma, appeals, comma, and abatements of property tax assessments. And then also this is part of the rulemaking and the sunset review.
I'll second.
Oh,
This is Darius Wise. I'll second.
Thanks, Darius. I have a motion and a second. Is there any other further discussion? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Were there,
Yep.
I might not be hearing because I've only heard Darius and I.
Aye.
I,
Great, thank you guys. All those opposed say no. Okay, the motion passes.
So, board members, the next item on your agenda are the 2026 meeting dates. You don't have to, this is not an action item for you. It's just so that you can put those meetings on your calendar. Doreen goes ahead and books them out a year in advance. Is there anything that you would like on your agenda for your January meeting aside from rulemaking?
Is there discussion in terms of education, possible education requirements by the division? Or is that something that,
You mean like additional education requirements?
not in terms of more hours, but similar to I'm thinking that realtors have a commission update class that they have, and I didn't know if there would ever has been or if it could be instituted something similar. I know it's different topics, but I don't know if that might be something that can be discussed.
If you'd like to discuss it at your January meeting, I can put that on your agenda.
Okay, that would be great.
And that is it for policy matters.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next is the citizen participation period. Any person may bring their concerns about matters not on the agenda before the board. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to 2 minutes unless allowed additional time by the board. Is there anyone who's signed up to speak or anyone who wishes to speak?
Board members, this is David Donnelly. There are no individuals that reached out to us prior to the meeting. However, if anyone that is in attendance today would like to address the board, please use the raise hand icon that you can find in the Zoom tools menu at the bottom, generally most often at the bottom of your screen, and we can identify you. And while anyone else is contemplating that, Joanne, I have asked you to unmute and you can address the board.
Thank you very much, David. I'm Joanne Apostle. As most of you know, I have been an appraisal educator since 2005 in the state of Colorado, and I'm certified residential. I'm currently the education chair of a local organization, and I wanted to bring to the board's attention the difficulties we've had over the last year and a half in getting CE approval. In fact, the class that we had planned for December was denied because it didn't cover Colorado state specific rules, because we had regulators from Wyoming, Nebraska, and Idaho on board. And then also it was denied because of a question and answer session. However, I have talked with both John Brennan at the ASC, and I have talked with another state regulator that said both of these requirements exceed the AQB minimums. What I think is happening is that the real estate CE rules are being applied to appraisal CE approvals, which is inappropriate. And it's becoming time consuming and a hardship on volunteer organizations to get these approved. In the past, we also had a fair housing class on an artificial intelligence class, and it took us almost 3 weeks to get that course approved from a well-known artificial intelligence SME across the nation. And so I just would like to bring to the board's attention that appraisers are not getting good quality education that they enjoy because of these hardships. We've decided to pivot on our December class and bring in other people because we didn't feel like we were going to get the course approved. And so now, unfortunately, our membership will not hear from Marcia or any other state regulator. And that's really all I wanted to bring to the board's attention. Thank you.
So board members, Joanne reached out to me yesterday. I've got a meeting scheduled today to discuss kind of what's going on as far as CE requirements are concerned.
Okay.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Joanne.
Board members, I'm not seeing any other hands at this time. So I will pass it back to you all.
Thanks, David. Next, we'll move on to complaint matters. The first complaint is number 2025-441.
That's right. Case number 2025441 is board matter A. The complainant questioned the objectivity and USPAP compliance of the respondent's appraisal, citing concerns about the use of Louisville comparables for a superior property and the appraisal value matching the negotiated purchase price. The subject property in the Waterford neighborhood in Superior, Colorado, is a custom-built home with high-end finishes, unlike the more affordable homes in the subject's immediate marketing area. Due to limited sales activity in the Waterford neighborhood, comparables were sourced from the broader Louisville area. The appraisal considered the subject's property's renovations, adjusting for condition, and incorporated the negotiated contract price into the final value opinion. In reviewing the report and work file, there appeared to have been potential USPAP violations of the scope of work rule, record-keeping rule, and multiple violations of standard rules 1 and 2, as well as board rules and state statutes. There was insufficient commentary and documented support for the adjustments in the sales comparison approach. Also, it appeared that the site value included in the cost approach was taken directly from the county assessor record. Some of the respondents' support for some of the adjustments seemed to be simply stated. The respondent's work file did contain an Excel spreadsheet depicting the adjustment calculator adjustments that were administered. Potential violations include 1210-613-1B, 1210-613-1G, the scope of work rule, the record keeping rule, and standard rules 1 and 2 as identified. Disposition for the disciplinary recommendation includes a dismissal with education, with coursework in residential sales comparison and income approaches, residential appraiser site valuation and cost approach, 7 or more hours in comparative analysis and or supporting adjustments, and reliable record keeping. And Investigator Wentz is here to answer your questions.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
I will make the motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions for the investigator? I wanted to understand the dismissal with education, how that,
Sure.
what is the difference? Oh, go ahead.
Sure. It's identified as a dismissal with education. The more accurate description would be it's education that results in subsequent dismissal. So once the licensee has completed the coursework that's identified and provided proof of completion, then it ends in a dismissal. We dismiss the file.
Okay, so how would that differ from a diversion with education?
So with the diversion, that's a elevated or heightened disciplinary approach. Ultimately, diversion like this does not result in formal discipline with a final agency order. But the dismissal with education is it's regarded as a lighter disciplinary approach. And it's something that we will do occasionally on a delegated basis. But I was bringing it to the board's attention so that you could see what we do on a delegated basis, and then also so you could see the dismissal with education as a potential disciplinary action if you felt like that was more appropriate for any of the cases you see either in this meeting or in future meetings.
Okay, thanks, Garrett. Anyone else with anything?
Yeah, Garrett, question for me, and this is for my own education. When we look at fines, dollar amount fines, is there some sort of objectivity to the scale of those fines? You know, today we'll talk about fines of 500 up to 1,500.
Right.
So give me an idea of how that's determined and what the parameters are.
So we don't have a formal matrix or a menu that identifies a fine amount with specific violations, but we do try to provide a historical perspective of similar instances that have happened in the past, what the corresponding fine amount, what the discipline was, and make those recommendations accordingly. And then in addition to that, each case has its own unique aggravating or mitigating factors. So we will consider that when making a fine recommendation. But I present to the board that it's entirely up to you if you feel that a fine is too high, is too low. When you're comparing similar cases, either in the same meeting or across meetings, you can have that discussion, and you can make an adjustment to the fine amount to whatever you feel is appropriate as a board.
Garrett, that's really helpful. So I'm understanding based on what you said, it's fairly subjective based on historical data.
Right. We try to make it fairly consistent amongst historical data, but like I said, there's different fact patterns. There's aggravating and mitigating factors, and how you weigh the importance of them is entirely up to you as part of this process.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing nothing further, we'll take a vote. All those in favor to accept the staff's recommendation, say aye. And if you wouldn't mind raising your hand.
Aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. The motion passes. The next complaint is complaint number 2025-41.
Yep. And this is complaint matter B. The complainant alleged the respondent was negligent in determining after repair value of the subject property. The complainant felt that the ARV comps used were significantly smaller and in average homeowner condition, leading to an inaccurate valuation. The respondent failed to consider comparable properties that were larger and in excellent condition and more relevant to the fix and flip project. The investigation determined that the appraisal report used comparables from various single-family detached homes in the subject neighborhood, adhering to established parameters for the property type, size, data range, and geographic boundaries. The selected comparables reflected both the as-is value and after repair value of the subject property, considering its condition and renovation scope. In reviewing the report and work file, there appeared to have been potential USPAP violations of the scope of work rule, record keeping rule, and multiple violations of standard rules 1 and 2, as well as board rules and state statutes. There was insufficient commentary and documented support for the adjustments in the sales comparison approach. Also, it appeared that neither the cost or income approaches were considered. The respondent's support for some of the adjustments seemed to be simply stated. Potential violations include 1210-613-1B, 1210-613-1G, the scope of work rule, the record keeping rule, and standard rules 1 and 2 as identified. Disciplinary recommendation includes diversion, a fine of $500, and coursework to include residential sales comparison and income approaches, residential appraiser site valuation and cost approach, 7 or more hours in comparative analysis and or supporting adjustments, and reliable record keeping. And Investigator Wentz is here to answer your questions. And I'll just offer, in light of our last discussion about some of the disciplinary recommendations, part of what went into this disciplinary recommendation is looking at previous board action. And you could see that there was 2 previous disciplinary matters. So that's part of the reason why this recommendation is slightly higher in the disciplinary scope than board matter A. So we looked at that as a potential aggravating factor. You could look at that the same, or you could look at that and say, well, the last disciplinary matter was almost 10 years ago, and potentially view that as mitigating. So that's something you can include as part of your discussion.
Okay, thanks, Garrett. Do I have a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
So I have a couple questions on this one.
Okay, if we get a motion in a second, then we can discuss it. Marcia, does it make a difference whether a discussion happens before or after the motion for the recommendation?
You can ask questions before any motions are made.
Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
Scott, sorry, I was reading the complaint.
Yes, sir.
And it seemed like after all the explaining of the realtor's opinion of differences, they ended it with, I have never witnessed a more incompetent appraiser than this gentleman. And he was hundreds of thousands of dollars off in his valuation, which is inexcusable for an appraiser. When you do the investigation, do you go back afterwards and look? And I'm asking that because the complainant listed this house at obviously what they thought the as repaired value was supposed to be. And it's been reduced by over 200,000 already, bringing it in line almost with the as repaired value. And it's been sitting on the market for 180 days. I mean, I know we can't forecast that, but in defense of the appraiser, he had some errors, but the as repaired value doesn't appear to be too far off.
Correct. Yes, sir.
I agree with you, Rob. I think that even though that the fix and flipper was thinking that it was going to be at that value at that time when they listed it, of course, and it now being sitting on the market for that many days. There's nothing that I think the appraiser could have done with that. I think that it was fair what they appraised it at.
What was there an actual posed question to that? I'm sorry, sir.
My question was, once you complete your report,
right?
Do you revisit it after, or you've completed your report, your investigation? What would make you revisit it? If the appraiser came back and said, "Hey, I made these mistakes, I understand," but
right.
In terms of the complaint, and it was the valuation of the as repaired, is there a recourse, or is it just you made the errors on this? That's what we're sticking with.
It's basically the errors that were made on this. I understand as far as where you where the board's actually coming from as far as where the appraiser took the viewpoint on the actual property and so much time has elapsed. Now, as far as when I complete my investigation, the only rhyme or reason for me to go back and actually readdress the investigation or something like that is if I had an additional comment, either from the respondent or the complainant. And the majority of the cases that I've been investigating, I do contact the complainant as well on my investigations. So if that
Okay.
answers your question, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And board member style, I would just offer that the potential violations and the corresponding discipline is based on the process. Generally, when we're investigating, we're not looking at the accuracy of the appraisal value, but the process that was used in getting there. And so what you see before you is some of the issues that the investigator found in the review of the appraisal and the work file, not necessarily
The result.
indicating the actual allegations within the complaint related to the value.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Can I get a motion then to accept the staff's recommendation?
With that being said, I make a motion to accept the recommendations.
Thanks, Rob. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
This is Brent Goff. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I think we've cleared that up, but just to make sure. Hearing no further discussion, I have a motion and a second, and we will now take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. The motion passes. We can now move on to complaint matter C, 2025-440.
Right. The complainant alleged the respondent valued the subject property at an overinflated value in excess of market value due to selection of inappropriate comparables from a completely different market area. The investigation determined that the respondent conducted a thorough appraisal considering the property's extensive remodel and selected comparables properties within the same market area. The appraisal was based on objective evidence and market research, not on requests from the realtor or any other interested parties. Upon review of the appraisal report and accompanying work file, there appear to be potential violations of the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, specifically the Scope of Work Rule, the Record Keeping Rule, and multiple sections within Standard Rules 1 and 2, in addition to possible noncompliance with applicable board rules and state statutes. The sales comparison approach lacked adequate commentary and credible documented support for the adjustments applied. Furthermore, there is no evidence that the cost approach or income approach were considered in the development of the appraisal. The respondent's rationale for several adjustments were presented in a conclusionary manner without a clear explanation of the methodology employed or the underlying market data used to support the paired sale analysis reference. Potential violations include 1210-613-1B, 1210-613-1G, the Scope of Work Rule, Record Keeping Rule, and Standard Rules 1 and 2 as identified. Disciplinary recommendation includes dismissal with education, with the coursework being residential sales comparison and income approaches, residential appraiser site valuation and cost approach, 7 or more hours in comparative analysis and or supporting adjustments, and reliable record keeping. And again, Investigator Wentz is here to answer your questions.
Does anybody have any questions or discussion regarding this one?
Sorry, guys, I have another question, not related to this report. This report was 3 years old. I know our record keeping rules, but is there a time frame of filing a complaint against an appraiser? Does anyone know? I understand record keeping, and if we didn't have our records, that's fine, but is there a statute of limitations for the state of Colorado on when it can be filed?
So the statute of limitations is when the program was created. So it'd be back like 1991.
Okay,
Although the longer you wait, the more difficult it is to investigate a complaint.
right. Okay, thank you.
Can I get a motion then to accept the staff's recommendation?
Sorry, Daisy, I had to read it again.
Yeah,
This is Rob Stylo. I motion to accept the staff recommendation.
Thanks, Rob. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Darius.
Thanks, Darius. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing nothing further, we can take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
And the motion passes. We can now move on to complaint matter D, number 2025-1238.
The complainant allegation that the respondent accepted an assignment contingent on reporting to a predetermined value appeared to have merit. In addition, when reviewing the report and work file, there also appeared to have been potential USPAP violations of the ethics rule, scope of work rule, record-keeping rule, and multiple violations of standard rules 1 and 2, as well as board rules and state statutes. The respondent failed to have adequately researched and analyzed the neighborhood and market areas. The respondent appeared to have used sales price as primary search criteria to determine comparable properties and in the selection of the comparable sales. In the sales comparison approach, there was no documented support for the adjustments. Despite the report naming 2 adjustment methods, neither appeared to have been actually used. Instead, the respondent relied primarily on observations and general market knowledge, instead of detailed analysis. The report stated the state statute regarding ad valorem appraisal prohibited her from developing the cost and income approaches, but the respondent is not a licensed ad valorem appraiser. Additionally, the respondent did not appear to have developed the report independently from the intended users. Potential violations include 1210-613-1B, 1210-613-1G, the ethics rule, the scope of work rule, the record keeping rule, and standard rules 1 and 2 as identified. Disciplinary recommendation includes diversion, a fine of $1,500, and coursework in residential sales comparison and income approaches, residential appraiser site valuation and cost approach, 7 or more hours in comparative analysis and or supporting adjustments, and reliable record keeping. And investigator Walker is here to answer your questions.
This is Brent Goff. I have a thought and a question on the potential violations. I would like to add to our thinking the jurisdictional exception rule. USPAP tells us that there's a law out there and it precludes us from using an appraisal technique. We have to identify the law, a regulation, and then we also have to comply with the law and ultimately have to disclose it in the report. So the appraisal went to the Board of Assessment Appeals and was discussed there. It should have been identified as an intended user of the report. And the appraiser should have identified the Colorado Constitution, Article 10, Section 28C, which mandates a market approach only and precludes a cost or income approach for residential properties. So I would like to ask that you amend page 11 of your investigative report. My thought is that when faced with that law that precludes a income or cost approach, and that the intended use was at the Board of Assessment Appeals, the appraiser had no choice but to follow the law, cite the law, and then the reconciliation. You don't have to reconcile to a cost approach or an income approach at that point. They would only have to say that the law precludes me from employing one. So I would say that the assertion that only county assessors have to follow the law is incorrect. If the appraiser is going to the Board of Assessment Appeals, they're the intended user, then the expectation would be that they follow the law as well. I don't think a appraiser outside of the assessor office would be allowed to talk about a cost approach or an income approach successfully. They would shut him down very quick, or shut her down and say, that's not allowed in this venue. They recognize that the law is paramount and the appraisal technique would be not allowed cost or income. So I'd ask that we amend that page 11 where it talks about reconciliation and that the statute only applies to ad valorem appraisers. I think not. I think it applies to the intended use for ad valorem appraisal. If the intended use is for a tax appeal, and the appraiser, regardless of being in the assessor office or not, has to follow the law. That's my thought.
So Brent, am I understanding correctly that you're wanting him to revise his investigative report based on an interpretation of the law?
Yes. I feel strongly that if you're doing an appraisal with an intended use for a property tax appeal, and if you're in front of the Board of Assessment Appeals or district court or arbitration, that both parties would be required and expected to follow the law. And it's a matter of competency that every appraiser needs to be, they need to be adept in what law applies for the assignment. And everybody that's done any kind of tax appeal work at the Board of Assessment Appeals knows that the income approach and cost approaches are not allowed in that venue. So if they're an intended user of the report, and the expectation is that you would follow the law in favor of the normal appraisal technique that the appraiser would use. So yeah, I'd like to see that amended to where the two things. I think that the jurisdictional exception rule was a potential violation because he didn't identify the law, he didn't comply with it, and he didn't disclose it in the report. He should have cited the law, not just a vague Colorado statute. Should have said what statute it was and disclosed that statute in the report. But then in addition to that, page 11, I have a problem with the statement that the statute only applies to ad valorem appraisers and only a county assessor employee. The expectation would be that both parties, both appraisers, would have to follow the law.
Madam Chair, I think Board Member Goff is correct. There's a section in Title 39 that discusses that sales comparison approach is only necessary. So I'll find that law and give it to Rob so that he can amend that one provision in his report, and also cite the statute that applies that the appraiser should have cited as their jurisdictional exception.
Yeah.
Okay, and is that change something that the board needs to have action in this meeting about? In terms of voting? Or is that just something, a correctional?
So I think when you go to vote, if the board so chooses, you can cite the what Board Member Goff has identified as a potential additional violation, and also just cite that the investigator is amending his report to cite the appropriate statute.
Okay. And Brent, were you suggesting any change in the discipline in considering that, or no?
That's just what I was going to say, is to the degree that you feel that that affects what the appropriate discipline is, you can make that as part of your recommendation or what you vote on as well.
No, I think the discipline's appropriate.
As the staff's recommended it as of right now?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have any input?
This is Rob Style. Am I reading that they presented 4 or multiple copies to their client before finalizing it?
Yes, that's why I suggested there was a potential lack of independence, because they, submitted, 4 drafts to the client before actually submitting the report.
Do we know if it was like the client reading it and making changes?
Yes,
And the appraiser followed the client's direction on the changes?
it appeared they did.
Thank you.
And at least one occasion took their change verbatim and put it into the report.
Thanks.
And these were material changes that have impacted results? Not clerical.
That would be up to your interpretation, I would say.
Okay.
Also, I would like to add that the assessor, the board of equalization was not an intended user on the report.
Yeah, they probably should have listed them as an intended user if they know they're going to go to that venue and argue. It's going to be entered into as a exhibit and discussed and argued about. They should have listed the board as an intended user. Not the client, obviously, but they're one of the intended users.
Brent, do you want to make a motion then?
Sure. This is Board Member Goff. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the staff recommendation for discipline on complaint number 2025-1238 with an additional potential violation of the jurisdictional exception rule, and also an edit to the language on page 11 where it talks about the statute only applies to ad valorem appraisers and only a county assessor. it's my opinion that the appraiser would have to follow the law and claim the jurisdictional exception as well, which would have altered his final reconciliation, would have been a very easy reconciliation that I don't know how to say this other than the cost and income approaches are not allowed by law. So I relied only on the sales comparison approach. The final reconciliation is that needs to be edited.
I didn't hear that last thing that you said, Brent. Can you repeat it?
Page 11 needs to be edited on the investigative report.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Bessie. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
So we're accepting it, the recommendations with alterations to the investigative report.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, I have a motion and a second, and we'll now take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion passes.
Right.
Okay, we can move on to complaint matter E, number 2025-1296.
Yes, the complainant alleged the respondent failed to reconcile the subject's square footage discrepancy, sufficiently support the adjustments, failed to adequately analyze the current market conditions, and improperly selected the comparable sales. Most of the allegations appear to have merit. In addition to the complaint allegations, when reviewing the report and work file, there also appeared to have been potential USPAP violations of the ethics rule, scope of work rule, record-keeping rule, competency rule, and multiple violations of standard rules 1 and 2, as well as board rules and state statutes. The respondent failed to adequately research and analyze the current market conditions. The respondent appeared to have missed a substantial portion of publicly available market data by relying solely on the MLS for sales and market information due to the abundance of builder sales, which were not entered into the MLS. The report did not include the criteria used to determine a comparable property, nor did it specify anything regarding the selection of the comparable sales. In the sales comparison approach, there was no documented support for the adjustments. Despite the client explicitly stating all adjustments were to reflect market reaction, the appraiser reportedly used contract pricing as adjustment support. In the cost approach, the site value was taken from the assessor's records and there was no support for the building costs. It did not appear the income approach was ever considered. Additionally, it appeared the respondent appraised to a predetermined opinion the contract price. Possible violations include 1210-613-1B, 1210-613-1G, the ethics rule, scope of work rule, record keeping rule, and competency rule, as well as standard rules 1 and 2 as identified. Disciplinary recommendation includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, work product review of 4 appraisals in 2 months, and coursework in residential sales comparison and income approaches, residential appraiser site valuation and cost approach, 7 or more hours in comparative analysis and or supporting adjustments, and reliable record keeping. And Investigator Walker is here to answer your questions.
Did anyone have any questions or for the investigator?
I do. Sorry, guys. Rob, the complaint says that they submitted a reconsideration of value request, but the lender denied because it was at or above contract price.
That is correct.
It was the reconsider. I answered my own question. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Darius. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Let's see, was it Rob that seconded that?
It was
Brett,
Brent who seconded.
Brent, okay. Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any last discussion on this? Okay, hearing no further discussion, I have a motion and a second. We'll now take a vote. All those in favor to accept the staff's recommendation, say aye. Aye.
aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. We'll now move to licensing matters, which it looks like there is none. It also looks like there are no ESP matters. And we handled the AG matters already. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Oh, Bessie, you are muted. I think you.
Sorry, I motion.
Great. I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, great. The meeting is adjourned and the next meeting is January 8th. Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Happy holidays, guys. Thanks.